Lance.
Nick.
I'm Daniel.
I'm Paul.
And I'm Maddie.
And we decided to look at what nanotechnology would look like in the field of health and medicine in the year 2070. So what is nanotechnology? Nanotechnology is science conducted at the nanoscale, which is about 1 to 100 nanometers, and a nanometer is about a billionth of a regular meter. Nanoparticles are so small that you could fit 100,000 nanoparticles on a single strand of human hair. So now we're going to look at why it's important to see what we can already do with nanotechnology today. Well, we already have nanotechnology in our sunscreen to protect us from UV rays. We already have it in our plastic packaging to make sure our food doesn't spoil. And we already have it in bandages to kill germs. And some manufacturers use nanotechnology now to track their products to make sure that they don't get stolen or broken or anything like that. So it's important to know that we can do these kinds of things already so that we can have realistic speculations as to what we can be able to do with nanotech in the year 2070. So we're going to be talking about three main things: tissue engineering, cancer treatment, and diagnostics and imaging, and how nanotechnology can improve all those things within our field. And towards the end, we'll be talking about how nanotechnology, although their capabilities may seem endless, it will raise ethical concerns, and we will talk about that. So here's Nick with diagnostics and imaging.
All right. So we can't appreciate where we're going until we know where we currently are. Right now, there's three ways for diagnostics and imaging to happen. We have CT scans, MRIs, and blood work. CT scans is computed tomography. What it does is it uses a focused beam of X-rays to slice the body into little pieces that are then digitized and put up on a computer screen. You also have MRIs, which is magnetic resonance imaging. It uses a high-powered magnet to align the electromagnetic field of the body and uses RF energy to bombard it, and essentially does the same thing as a CT scan, just with a little bit more high resolution. Blood work, blood sample is taken and it's spun in a centrifuge, and then you are testing the sample for specific antibody indicators. So here we have an example of a MRI machine. You can see it's pretty big, it's not portable, it's not going anywhere. Our next slide shows what the output of a CT scan and what a MRI scan outputs. You know, you'd need some education to be able to see what you're looking at there. Here is the blood work sample. You can see she just has like a pair of gloves on, not very safe, may risk of cross-contamination. Also, it's pretty tedious. So let's go ahead and move on to the weaknesses of the current systems. Right now, the biggest thing is cost. The MRI machines cost anywhere between $1 million and $3 million, depending on the model, essentially. The rooms also cost $250,000 to create. The size, they're not very portable. There's also big energy requirements, especially for the MRI and CT scanning devices. They need a dedicated power grid to run off of. There's also some damage. You have there's some dangerous things that we need to look out for. First off, you have radiation issues, especially with the CT scans. Also, the magnetic field can actually pull shrapnel out of the body in a MRI machine. Let's go ahead and go to the nanobots. So what nanobots are going to do is they're going to enter the scene. After the R&D costs, they're going to be real cheap. They're small. You can take them with you anywhere you need to go. You can also reprogram them on the fly. So you don't need to bring a medicine for, virus A, bacteria B, all that stuff. You can bring one sample of nanobots, reprogram them as they happen, and they'll be able to fight off whatever you need. There's little training required, so a couple hours, like a big classroom, you can teach a whole lot of people how to use them so you can get effective diagnosis and treatment on the fly. Let's go ahead and go to a case study of the Ebola outbreak in 2014. There was 30,000 people infected. Spread quickly. There was no early diagnosis or treatment available because of poor working conditions and protocol. 6 people in the healthcare industry actually became infected with Ebola, 2 of which died. So now we can look at a sample newspaper clipping from the year 2070. First thing to notice is that this is not a front page article. There's not, 10,000 people die in West Africa. Nobody died. So it's on the 3rd page. Some no-name wrote it. Big thing is that Monday morning, World Health Organization was notified of a potential Ebola outbreak. By Tuesday night, they already had diagnostic testing centers set up. They tested 1 million people. By Wednesday afternoon, 0 cases were left, and nobody was actually killed in it, so it's pretty nice. We can now move on to tissue engineering and see how that would be able to save lives.
All right. Tissue engineering used in conjunction with nanotech is going to change the face of the donor market. Basically, what tissue engineering does is replace, repair, or recreate missing or damaged tissues in the body. As you can see here, you can't really tell the difference between what's been recreated with nanotech and what was already existing in the body. So what happens is the nanotech is injected and acts like tissues. With this, we're going to be able to recreate new tissues, organs, or even new bones. This is going to increase our lifespan because patients won't have to wait months or even years for a heart that matches their blood type. They can just have the heart recreated and repaired with nanotech. On top of that, this new form of transplants will be safer because patients won't be at risk for infection through the surgery or their body rejecting new organ because it'll just be part of their own DNA. So this is that last one. There's a mouse that's had an ear attached to its back with nanotechnology. So that's kind of going to show you what we're going to be able to do in the future with nanotech. And that's a sample of a bone that's been reconstructed with nanotech.
All right, cancer, the definition of cancer is an uncontrolled reproduction of cells. There are three, obviously we don't know exactly what's going to happen with the cause of nanotech in the future, but there are three main things we can guess. One of three, you might be able to kill the cancer cells completely. It could just stop the cancer from spreading, or it could be used as a diagnostic help to discover and report on the cancer. And there are three main ways right now that we can help cure cancer: radiation, chemotherapy, and surgery. All three of these really damage the tissue and organs, and there's not like 100% eradication of the cancer. There can still be some lingering. The bright side of nanotech in the future, we would be able to identify the cancer faster, easier. You wouldn't have to do pre-surgeries and after surgeries to see if there's any cancer left. It would completely eradicate the cancer, possibly.
Alright, I'm going to talk about the ethical questions and ramifications concerning nanotechnology in medicine. In our culture and society, when we think of nanotech gone wrong, we think of Cody Banks' Ice Cube or G.I. Joe, where national monuments are destroyed by a green cloud of robots. First off, I just have to say that if we're going to consider the ethical ramifications of nanotech, we need to have a debate founded on sound science, not feeble predictions spiced with sci-fi. First, I want to talk about the enhancement of human capabilities by nanosurgery. For example, even how nanosurgery is being developed to possibly allow people to see infrared or ultraviolet light, part of the spectrum, or see in the dark using ultrasound sensors. Next, I want to talk about genetic enhancement being made possible through nanotech. I want to make a distinction between therapy and modification, therapy being to solve genetic disorders or like fix problems, and modification to make a human better than the average human. This distinction isn't very strong. It's a very moral gray area. Genetic enhancement gets a bad rep because of that, usually for good reason, but like technically vaccines and other medications are enhancers of the immune system, so where do we draw the line? First, I want to talk about the somewhat clearly wrong aspects of genetic modification. For example, if people were to modify the germline cells, which are the sex cells that are directly carried to your offspring, then you would in fact be genetically modifying your offspring, taking away their right to decide, or self-autonomy technically, which is a bioethical principle that a lot of scientists like to talk about. Some scientists and bioethic experts talk about a person's right to chance, as in the right to be born randomly, basically. But what if modifying the germline cells is to modify disease? The right to life is obviously most important, so if modifying the germline cells help make that possible, then why not? However, any damage done and mistakes in the procedure would be irreversible, and the offspring would have had no say in the matter. Another question we must ask ourselves is, where do we draw the line between eugenics and just trying to make our kids be normal and healthy? What is considered normal and healthy? We have to also consider the societal repercussions. If enhancement by either nanosurgery or genetic modification becomes a reality, who should be allowed to have the treatment? Should it be for those who can afford it, or do we have a moral responsibility to those who are worse off? On to self-assembling nanotech going haywire. People are constantly debating whether nanotech that can self-assemble in your body, whether for tissue engineering or otherwise, is too risky. They're imagining a Cody Banks situation where tiny robots eat their eyes. The problem is there's very little evidence either way, as the tech isn't very developed at that moment. It hasn't developed enough to give us enough data to predict accurately. Instead, we have to approach each step with caution and make cost-benefit analyses with each new development. In conclusion, while we should consider the bioethics of nanotechnology, if we move forward with caution and consideration, we should be able to embrace this technology with the knowledge that it may transform the entire medical industry and change the world for the better.